Hey guys, okay, let's talk about section 13.2 reflexes. And with this section, we are looking at the reflex arc, which will be another diagram that you will label and just have to understand the basic layout of those sensory, relay, and motor neurons. So an involuntary task, like we spoke about at the end of the last video, or a reflex response does not involve the brain as the coordinator of the reaction, and you're not even really aware that you completed it until after you've carried it out. This is an automatic and rapid response, such as touching something that's sharp or hot and you yank your hand back really fast. One reason why it doesn't need to involve the brain for this is because we have adapted to protect ourselves. So it doesn't take us so long to realize we are touching something hot that we can pull back really, really fast to help keep us from getting burned more or so bad that it can be a less of an injury than had the impulse had to go to our brain and then go back to our hand to say, hey, take your hand off the hot plate, right? So when we're looking at this, ultimately it means that the response is quicker than any type of nervous response to help minimize the damage to the body. Reflex actions are automatic, fast, and protective. So let's go ahead and look at that arc. Let's say you step on a sharp nail, okay? You've got that receptor cell in the sensory neuron on your skin, right? Because your whole skin is like an organ filled with the receptor cells so you can feel things that are happening to you. That pin is the stimulus, stimulating your body to say, ow, that hurts, okay? So you receive the stimulus of pain. It is going to travel up that sensory neuron. It will then hit the relay neuron. This is close to your spinal cord, but ultimately does not have to go up the spinal cord to the brain, okay? So it's in your spinal cord section, but the impulse doesn't have to travel all the way up to your brain. It can stop right there at the spinal cord. So the relay neuron is in that center here, relaying back to your motor neuron, which controls a muscle in your leg, which is the effector, to say, hey, pick up your foot off the sharp nail. Okay, so this is a reflex arc. Okay, all right. Now, if we are looking at kind of the main terms, and I've seen this on a test question, so make sure you understand the reflex pathway and how the stimulus creates a response and how it travels through the body. So you have your stimulus, which comes in contact with a receptor, which then allows that impulse to travel up the sensory neuron to the relay neuron, then to the motor neuron, which causes a response in the effector, and then there's an actual response made, okay? So this has been a test question. Just note it will be in your notes, and make sure you look over that. Okay, we also need to talk about our synapses. The junction between two neurons is known as a synapse. And in the last video, I mentioned the dendrites at the ends of your neurons that are like these little hair-like projections. They don't physically touch each other inside of our body. Now, they're very, very close. But as we have impulses that move down our neurons or up our neurons, they jump, so to speak, and they jump across the synapse, which is a small space. And something that we'll look at that's really cool is in our drug unit, drugs are going to be what affects a lot of these synapses, and that's why we have certain feelings that we have if we are ingesting chemicals, either for medical intervention or, even things that you're not supposed to be ingesting. It ultimately impacts these synaptic gaps, okay? All right, so when you look at, like, let's say this purple structure here with the little balls inside of it, that would be a sensory neuron that contains the vesicles with neurotransmitters, that has that actual impulse of, hey, I just stepped on the tack. Okay, those neurotransmitters move down into the presynaptic membrane. They jump across the synaptic cleft into the postsynaptic membrane of that next relay neuron. Okay. And then there's neurotransmitter receptor molecules that receive that impulse to then pass it along to your relay neuron, which then will send them down their neuron into the motor neuron in the same format, okay? Which is really cool if you really think about it. And all this happens faster than we can possibly imagine, but it's how it's chemically designed in your body to occur. It's pretty amazing. Now, this is going to be something that I just print out for you so you can understand what I just explained in word form, with those neurotransmitters that are coming in through the sensory neuron, being released into that synaptic cleft, being received into the postsynaptic neuron, and then moving on down, okay? And this will be something that I print out for you and give to you in a diagram and in your notes. Looking at just an exam tip before we move on to sensory organisms, you need to understand the structure and function of a synapse to explain what's happening at each step. So really just being able to understand this picture, that's why I'm going to print it out for you and give to you guys in your notes. All right, that's pretty much it for the reflex arc. Definitely take your notes, get your diagrams labeled, and move on to your check for understanding quiz. You should have an ed puzzle as well, and then just a small assignment to do for today. I'm very proud of y'all. Keep up the great work.